Hi, my name is Jay Sugarman, and I want to welcome you to Museum Open House. This ongoing series features and highlights many of the outstanding museums and other cultural institutions. The main purpose of most programs is to inform viewers about current and upcoming exhibits, various programs, resources, and other opportunities that are available for the general public. Today via Zoom, we're fortunate to have as our guests Thera Webb and Erin Stalberg from MIT Library's distinctive collections. In addition to hearing all about the collections, we'll be spending much of our time finding out about the fascinating exhibit curated by Thera entitled Under the Lens, Women Biologists and Chemists at MIT, 1865 to 2024. During the program, we'll learn why and how the exhibit came about. We'll go on a behind-the-scenes tour and in the process come to better understand and appreciate the history and groundbreaking work and contributions of women biologists and chemists at MIT since the mid-1860s. Let's start by meeting Thera and Erin and then learning all about MIT Library's distinctive collections and the current exhibit, Under the Lens, Women Biologists and Chemists at MIT, 1865 to 2024, which will be on display until June 21st. Welcome. So delighted you're both able to be here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for having us. We're excited to be here.
You know, it's very interesting to first hear about the exhibit and then as an extra bonus to find out about the distinctive collections and all that's available there. Before we jump right to those two topics, I think it would be of interest if each of you would just share a little bit more about your backgrounds, professional interests, perhaps current positions. Thera, please.
Sure. I'm Thera Webb. I'm the Women at MIT Project Archivist. I am also the co-chair of the Society of American Archivists Women's Collections section. I have an undergraduate degree in gender studies from the New School of Social Research, an MFA in creative writing from UNC Greensboro, and a library science degree from Simmons University with a focus in archives and cultural heritage. My interests are really sort of working on getting us the greatest understanding of our historic record and caring for those materials. So like undervalued and marginalized groups whose work has not been collected is something I'm really passionate about, whether that's, you know, people of color, working class people, people living below the poverty line, women, or LGBTQIA people. I'm really interested in uncovering their history so that we have like a more holistic understanding of our world.
You know, it seems like that topic in a number of different disciplines and areas has shown some progress recently, but still, as you know, has a long way to go. So look forward to future contributions. Erin, a little bit about yourself, please.
Sure. I'm Erin Stalberg. I'm the Associate Director for Collections at the MIT Libraries. And the collections portfolio includes distinctive collections, which includes the MIT Institute Archives and the Women in MIT program. It also includes the library's the Aga Khan Documentation Center for Art and Architecture of the Islamic world. And then my portfolio also includes our general collections too. So sort of the normal things the libraries collect for circulation and access as well. I have a master's in library science from Drexel University, and my undergrad degree is at Mount Holyoke College in Western Massachusetts. And so also long interest in questions of gender and questions of archiving and caring for and knowing about the history of women in the institutions that we have, particularly here in the state of Massachusetts, but more widely as well.
Wonderful. Well, time permitting, perhaps we'll hear a little bit more about some of the programs and initiatives from the Department of Distinctive Collections. But moving on to the exhibit at hand, Thera, how and why did it come about?
Well, we have this really wonderful space on campus called the Myhaugen Gallery, and it's where Distinctive Collections does exhibits. The Women at MIT Archive initiative began in 2017, I think. Erin, is that correct? Okay, 2017. We have years of dedicated archivists working on growing and processing our collections. And I wanted to do an exhibit that wasn't just like an overview of women's experiences. Like we have so many materials and like so much work has gone into collecting them. And MIT is so like specific and kind of like geeky, and really like people are so smart and doing such weird, interesting work that I really wanted to show that in the exhibit. And so I'd been working with a student in the biology department to process a collection of this faculty member, Anna Maria Toriani Guarini. And her collection had a lot of electrophoresis gels in her lab notebooks. And those are, you know, if you see like a scientific picture and there's like a column with like a bunch of lines that are of different thicknesses, that's an electrophoresis gel. It has something to do with molecules and weight. I'm not a scientist myself, but being able to work with a student who is a scientist really gave me a lot of information on like what these were and the fact that they aren't normally kept and how like unique it was to have them. And so then I was thinking, we can really do like an exhibit that highlights a lot of the very special, like very MIT items in our collection that are unusual to find in most academic archives. We have like microscope slides of rodent brain segments. We have lab notebooks related to RNA research. We have these electrophoresis gels. And I just wanted to pull together an exhibit that showed off all of the like interesting and weird and like quirky things that I come across every day and like send my friends photos of. And I wanted to be able to show that to everyone and really tell a story of like the beginning of women at MIT without being like super generalist about it.
Terrific. And how did the logistics go forward once you had this vision for this type of exhibit?
Well, generally you make a proposal and you send it to the exhibits committee, which I think Erin is on, I'm not sure. And they sort of approve or not approve it. And in this case, it was approved, and spent some time mapping out like the story that I wanted to tell, the sort of key players and like entry points for like a visitor to the exhibit and how to get them engaged. And then working with a designer, working with our conservator to make sure that everything was okay to be on display. There were some items that we needed to have replications of because, you know, you can't put photos on display if they're being hit with a lot of light all of the time. And so there's a lot of work on just like the physical items to be displayed, as well as doing all of this research to try to uncover the stories of the women who were at MIT.
Could you please expound on the image that we see here, which relates to the double meaning of the title, Under the Lens?
Sure. This is a photo of a scientist, I believe, in the biology department, although I'm not quite sure. I know she was like a fellow, so she wasn't a student, she wasn't faculty. And I wanted also this exhibit to really show all of the kinds of women at MIT, so faculty, staff, students, researchers, and just think about the way that we have women who started at MIT. The first woman staff member was hired at MIT in 1865 to manage the chemistry lab. And now, you know, we have a woman president at MIT, the second one that we have. And so I just really wanted to be able to illustrate all of the types of women who've been active in chemistry and biology.
And the double meaning, Erin, what was behind that? What's the Under the Lens double meaning significance?
So I'm going to toss that one to Thera too, because she named it. So I think she should be able to share that piece. I'm happy to jump in on other questions, but this one I think is special for her.
I'm putting my MFA to good use and coming up with catchy titles. You know, I was thinking about the lens and how we had all of these microscopes and slides and things. And then I was thinking about how like really like women were so like investigated when they started like advocating for themselves to be part of like higher education. And there was this like really like examination of them, and like, were they worthy? Were they even capable physically of attending school and like doing hard mental labor, which it sounds outrageous to say out loud, but it was like an actual concern. And just thinking about all of the scrutiny that women scientists have been under throughout the years, including now, I thought it was just a really nice double meaning that worked together. And
Oh, most definitely, most definitely. Well, let's move on to the exhibit itself. Erin, can you give us a sense of the overview as we go through these? Both of you share your comments and observations of how things are laid out, different decisions that were made in placing the various items and artifacts around the display area.
Sure. I think where I'll start is to provide a little bit of context, so broader context for the Women at MIT archival project. And then that'll be able to give Thera the opportunity to talk about how she chose the items for the display.
Please do.
So if that works. So as Thera said, we started the Women at MIT project started in 2017. And it was created under the leadership of the director of libraries, Chris Berg, who was really interested in collecting the records of MIT women faculty, staff, and students that you see in this exhibit here, and the alums, and to really illuminate and elevate their stories. And one of the things that the project especially was trying to do was, and this is where the Thera's double meaning is really important, was the MIT historical record, the records that we have about MIT in the collection, really focus on women's role in changing MIT, women's role in progressing science for women at MIT, and under the lens in the way that Thera really described. And really, there was a dearth of resources about the actual science that these women were doing. And so there was really, we really wanted to focus not on, their contributions. So those contributions are unbelievably significant to the history of this institution. But we also really wanted to recognize the science that these women were engaged in. And so I think Thera can talk a bit about why she picks these particular these particular women with their particular scientific endeavors as you slide through these images.
Yeah, thanks for that background.
Yeah, I think absolutely that's right. It's a pet peeve of mine to see these like sort of like bird's eye views of women's contributions without being like, we had women scientists who are geniuses, we still do, who are doing like hard science that is completely beyond my understanding, that are causing like great contributions to the world. We had a woman who like Margaret Hutchinson Rousseau, who pioneered like the mass production of penicillin. And like, we don't know like a lot about her generally, but it's great to know that like somewhere in our records we have like, a list of the courses that she took when she was a student here. And so, yeah, I really wanted to spend some time thinking about these women as scientists as well as being women.
And the different type of artifacts that we're seeing, how did you make the choices of what to include, the range of items that are throughout the exhibit?
There were some that were really obvious, like for instance, the lab coat of Susan Hockfield, our first female president of MIT. We also have below the lab coat, there's a collection of her slides of rodent brains from her like neurobiology research. So that's just eye-catching and like cool and unusual for an archive to have. So I wanted to make sure to highlight that. I can sort of walk you through them as you go through the slides if you want. So we can look at, for instance, this, the case when you first walk in has materials related to women faculty and the work that they've done to achieve equal representation at MIT in terms of being faculty. So we have, some newspaper articles related to like the status of women faculty at MIT study in 1999, which really shone a lot of light on the fact that women faculty and researchers were physically being given less lab space than their male colleagues. And this report was written and was given to the president, and he looked at it and was like, I can't argue with these facts, you're absolutely right. we're going to do something about it. And that's like such a watershed moment in MIT history. So I really wanted to look at that. In this case, we also have the 1870 faculty meeting notes where they agree to admit Ellen Swallow Richards, our first woman student, as a trial, an experiment. And she was admitted as a special student, so non-matriculated. She already had a degree from Vassar. She was also working on a master's degree, but she also got an undergrad from MIT at that time. But they put her name in the enrollment records in pencil in case it didn't work out, and like somehow women weren't set up to be, scientists. And so I think that's really important and interesting to actually like see the minutes related to that decision, and the fact that they like tabled it the first weeks because they didn't want to discuss it. And so then they came back to it the next week and made a decision that they would admit women on a case-by-case basis as specials.
Fascinating, as disappointing as that is to hear. And this was one of her initiatives, I believe.
Yes. So the Women's Laboratory, this is really interesting. So Ellen Swallow Richards, who was admitted before she married Robert Howell Richards, so she was Ellen Swallow, had graduated from MIT and had been working for the state of Massachusetts doing a water quality survey, which at the time was like groundbreaking, also like measuring all of the lakes and potable water sources for the amount of like chemicals that were in them. But at this time also lab work was like a brand new idea. People didn't have hands-on experience in labs, and women were being admitted to MIT in every class and program except for things that required lab work because there weren't changing rooms for them and you had to wear like a special little lab outfit. And so Ellen and her friends at the Women's Education Association in Boston came up with a plan where they would pitch to MIT that they would fund a laboratory for women if MIT would give them the space for it. And so that is the Women's Laboratory at MIT. It ran from 1876 to 1883. When MIT expanded a little bit more, they were able to provide changing rooms for women, and then the labs were coeducational from there on. A great thing about the Women's Lab is that there were around 500 women who attended courses there. They were doing sort of self-directed research mostly, and it was both enrolled students, special students, and then a lot of teachers from the area who were trying to like keep up with this like vast, ever-changing new field of science and teach their students things. So there were like weekend and evening courses that teachers could attend at the lab as well, which I think is really interesting.
Nice. And then these last two panels.
Yeah, so this is, once women were allowed in all of the labs, I felt like we sort of branched off into biology, which was originally called natural history at MIT, and chemistry, and sort of looking at how then those fields branched off into the engineering aspects for when people were working on sort of like the physical production of materials.
Terrific. Let's continue our tour and just highlight any of the next couple of images and few items that either of you would like to expound upon just a little bit.
Sure, if you go to the next slide. Maybe the next one, because this is what I was talking about where the lab. Okay, so this is great because we have a selection of lab notebooks. Starting in the bottom left, we have Catherine Dexter McCormick's lab notebook from the early 1900s. Like she graduated in 1904, and she was one of the primary funders and sort of driving forces in the creation of the first birth control pill. And then we have a lab notebook from Zelma Weiss, who was a researcher in 1942, which is up in the top right. And then below that is a lab notebook from the 2010s. And it's really interesting to see that even though obviously things have changed, like the sort of physicality of lab notebooks has remained the same, and just the way people treat them was really interesting. We also have Ellen Swallow Richards' handwritten thesis in the center here. And then the dissertation for Linda Jordan, who was the third Black woman to earn a PhD from MIT.
Wonderful, wonderful.
And then behind that, you can see into the reading room, and there's a quilt in the background, which is
Oh, yeah.
an artist's rendition of Catherine Dexter McCormick that we have on display that was a donation from our alumni group.
Nice, nice. What's been some of the reaction and feedback to the exhibit so far from students, faculty, general public?
I'm gonna let Erin take that because I haven't.
So we did a few weeks ago, we did a fabulous exhibit opening event with some faculty and upper administration at MIT, and the exhibit was incredibly well received, and it's well received on many different dimensions. Like, everybody's interested in the materials that that are in the collection and the choice of objects that Thera picked to put on exhibit. But what is also exciting out of those conversations is for current faculty to be thinking about what their sort of documentation legacy is, and how they keep their lab notebooks, and how they might consider, you know, I had several conversations with a faculty in that evening about sort of where they just really hadn't thought about the usefulness of the documentation that they're creating as part of the research that they're doing for the future. And so it's really exciting for us to be able to engage in those conversations. Of course, you know, the MIT Archives would love to be the repository of you know, of collections of our current faculty, but also to just really have people think about what they're producing now and what the legacy and the educational, you know, we're a very active archive where we want students and faculty to be coming in and doing research and learning what they can from the experience of those who went before them. And so, you know, sort of seeing, I think many of the women who are exhibited, or the more recent women that are exhibited, the current faculty knew, and so now see their materials, you know, on display here in this way, and are thinking about how our current students are doing research with those materials, and what the potential of not just the science that they're doing, not just the work that they're doing, but the documentation of that work for future generations is really exciting to see and to watch. Tara's been doing a number of tours and other sort of other smaller group sessions, but it's been exciting to see the ways in which people think about the exhibit and the exhibit space, and also about their legacies here at MIT.
Yeah, I know one of the impetus and major initiatives is the Women Initiative to make it all encompassing of all different aspects of involvement at MIT. So it sounds like it's really engendered that type of mindset going forward. You know, accompanying the exhibit is a fabulous additional enhancement is the digital exhibit. Just a quick word about that feature that people can access right from home.
Yeah, we wanted to make something that would be accessible for people who couldn't get to the space for whatever reason. The gallery is open from 10 to 4 Monday through Friday. It's open to the public, but also we understand that not everyone lives in Cambridge. Parking can be hard around MIT, especially. We wanted it to be something that people could access at home and once the exhibit is taken down. So a great thing about it is we have all of the same information. Everything that's on the panels is in the website. And then we also have a ton of great photos from the MIT Museum. They really are a repository of all of the images historically up through the 90s, I think. They were the people who took care of all of the photographs from like MIT News. And so we have just like a real wealth of photos of women scientists from them. We also have our digitization team has been doing some really excellent scanning, like on-demand scanning work. So we have lab notebook pages, which I think is really fun to look at. And hopefully once the exhibit comes down, we'll be able to also upload some higher resolution photos of the actual exhibit cases, so that will remain on. But we did work to make sure that like we have a timeline of sort of all of the first, like, you know, the first Black woman to graduate from MIT with a biology degree, the first Asian woman to get tenure. So we have a timeline of all of those that has a lot of clickable items and like cool things to look at. So I think it's like pretty rich browsing experience.
Oh, it's fabulous. It's fabulous. Erin, in the few minutes we have left, circling back to what you gave a little overview at the beginning, would you please highlight a few of the programs and initiatives from the distinctive collections?
Sure, absolutely. Before I move on to that, if I can just thank our donors first, can I just throw a plug into,
For sure.
obviously as I'm sure y'all, we can't do this work alone. So the Women at MIT program is really put in place with thanks to the generous support of Barbara Ostrom, who is of the class of 78, and Shirley Sontheimer. And they really were hoping that this project would help encourage more women and underrepresented people to become engaged in science, engineering, and technology. And so over the years, they've been joined by a number of other MIT alums in championing this work. And I just want to say we're really grateful to all of them for being able to make happen what we have going here.
No, thank you for including that.
Thank you. The Department of Distinctive Collections, as I said at the beginning, consists of the Institute Archives, so sort of which this Women in MIT program is a part. It also consists of the Aga Khan Center for Documentation for Islamic Art and Architecture. And so they have upcoming exhibits too. They're actually the next two exhibits will be come out of the Aga Khan Center. So we encourage folks to stay engaged and see their amazing architectural, so there'll be amazing architectural exhibits that we're very excited about too. The Distinctive Collections also includes the Wunsch Conservation Lab, which does a lot of public programming on sort of the conservation of objects that we have in the collection. And this past week it was Preservation Week. So we did some Preservation Week activities in the Conservation Lab and across campus. And then of course the Institute Archives serves both the community of MIT and the sort of researcher questions that come out of MIT looking for historical documentation from MIT's history, and it's fully open to the public. So we very much encourage researchers to come in and to use the collections and to imagine a future, a scientific future that takes all these pieces into consideration. And then the last thing I'll add is that MIT in general is very much about openness and open access to our collections. So as part of the reason that our archives is open to the public, it is by we do have an appointment system. So if users want to come in, they should make appointments with us. But we are really, we try to be as open as possible to those who are interested in doing research with our collections. And as Thera talked about in with the exhibit, we have a new exhibit platform. This was one of the first digital exhibit platforms. So that this was one of the first exhibits in the new digital exhibit platform. And we're hoping, we've got a few retrospectives that are coming out through there. And we're hoping that all of the MIT Libraries exhibits going forward will have a digital presence, because we really want to get our collections, open and out there as widely in the world as we can.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, unfortunately, we've come to the end of the program. I want to thank you both again for taking the time to be here, for informing us about Under the Lens and the distinctive collections. Look forward to visiting on another occasion. And for those who have an interest in the exhibit, on display, as we said at the beginning, until June 21st. So plenty of time to take advantage in person or to also go online for the digital exhibit. And we'll have some credit information on how to stay informed about different developments at MIT for the libraries. So thank you so much. Continued success with future endeavors.
Thank you so much for having us.
Also want to thank those of you watching for joining us, and hope you'll be able to tune in next time.